There's a tool there where all that your reader has to do is download your book file, then use that tool to upload it, and then it will go to every device listed on there.
It's just fundamental to your role as an author to be found, because it's a place where you've got full control, your house, your rules, so you can do what the hell you like, and it is a hub for you to send readers to do so many things.
Some authors are a little skittish about that. If readers share the link to your free book, you should take it as a compliment because they wanted to share it with somebody. Like, hey, this was really good, you should check it out.
Hey folks, welcome to the BookFunnel podcast, where indie authors get real-world advice on writing, publishing, and growing a career on their own terms. Whether you're just starting out or you're deep into your author journey, we're here to help you build your readership, boost your book sales, and connect with your audience. Each episode, we aim to bring you insights from authors, experts, and industry insiders who have been there, done that, and then some. My name is Jack. I am our lead author support specialist here at BookFunnel and your host for the BookFunnel podcast. Today, I am joined by my co-host, a special co-host today, Kat. Our lead reader support specialist is joining me today. And our guest for this episode of the podcast, Stu at Digital Authors Tookit. Stu, I want to welcome you to the podcast, sir. Good to have you here. For those in our audience who might not be familiar with you and your work, just really quickly, let us know what you do.
So I run a digital agency. Hello, by the way, Jack and Kat. Thank you so much for having me on BookFunnel podcast. I use BookFunnel pretty much daily, so I'm a huge ambassador and fanboy of your service. But so it's
Excellent.
great to be here. So yeah, I run a digital agency in the UK, working with authors across the world, creating online presence. Basically, our core product is websites, but we do lots of other stuff, which we're going to talk about today a little bit. And yes, made over 350 author websites so far, and the highest rated web designer on Readsy. So that's
Yeah,
me.
right. And it's going to be an interesting conversation today. We've had a whole bunch of different guests from different backgrounds. And to be quite honest, most of our guests have been authors. But it's always fun when we have somebody on the podcast who's not an author, but is still in the industry and has some different insights and that sort of thing. So really looking forward to kind of picking your brain on all of that. Normally at the beginning of the podcast, Emma and Kelly are here and we kind of catch up on our creative projects. But since they're not, we will kind of forego that here and just dive right in to our first segment, which is our tips from the trenches segment. In this segment, we will share with you some tips related to writing, publishing, or what have you, as it pertains to self-publishing. But even if you are a traditionally published author, these tips should be helpful to you. Basically, if you're trying to grow your author business, some of these tips should be helpful. And I should note that we will have a variety of tips for you. The tips are not always in the same theme, and we do not share our tips with each other ahead of time. So it'll be a surprise if by some miracle we all have the same tip. We did not share it in advance. I'll go ahead and go first. And this tip is on writing, in particular, motivation when it comes to writing. Of course, the sort of meme, if you will, is that writers are perpetually in a state of writer's block or not writing as much as they should be writing, right? And anybody who's been a writer for any period of time, you've been there. Once you've gotten through the honeymoon period, probably when you first started writing, you probably hit a lull or a period of time where you stopped writing altogether, and then you beat yourself up about it and you feel guilty about it and feel like, I had all these goals in mind and I let it go. The important thing that I've come to find out recently is that you need to understand what actually motivates you to write. And the really rose-tinted glasses answer is well, I write because I love to write. Right? I just enjoy writing so much that it oozes out of me. And while that's true for many people, I don't think that every author can say that that's enough to motivate them to write the next book, to meet all their goals, that is. Which is to say, if you have a rapid release strategy in mind, or you're trying to make money from your publishing, I feel like, quite frankly, for most authors, that intrinsic motivation of I just love to write, probably not enough to get you across the finish line for those goals. It's probably going to be enough to keep you writing over the course of your lifetime. But if you're wanting to make money from it, and as I've encountered this myself, you're going to come to a point where the writing stops for some reason you've lose motivation. And then you beat yourself up about it because you feel like, well, I'm supposed to just do this because I enjoy it. And there's this kind of cognitive dissonance where you're not meeting the expectations that you set for yourself. So extrinsic motivators are what my tip is. Find something that's external that can motivate you, because that intrinsic motivation can only get you so far. And maybe in an individual writing session, the intrinsic motivation takes over your joy for writing. But in terms of like having a publishing schedule and a plan of things that you like, books you want to write this year, right? Have something extrinsic that's outside of you and honestly outside of your control that's going to motivate you to write. So I'll give a few examples. That could be sharing your writing with readers and creating some accountability to them. Maybe updating a story in chapter form. A lot of authors will do this with their newsletter. Send your newsletter regular chapters of your current work in progress. This can help motivate you. If you have to send your newsletter next week, then you've got to have something ready to share with them. Pre-orders, especially on sites like Amazon, where you can set the pre-order date well in advance, and then you create a schedule for yourself and you can hold yourself accountable to that. And that's motivating. So that's my tip, right? Which is just to say, I guess it's two parts. Don't beat yourself up about it if the intrinsic motivation isn't enough, and create some motivator that's outside of yourself to help push you to accomplish your goals, right? So that's my tip.
Good tip
for today. Thank you,
tip.
Kat. Thank you. Now, who wants to go next?
I'd be happy to.
I'll go, Nick.
Go ahead.
But then you can go, Stu.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Stu. That's fine.
I'll go. So mine's about motivation and intrinsic. No, it's not.
I love it.
I do love the tip about pre-orders. That is a gold mine, though. People do forget how easy that is and how much that can help. So that's a brilliant tip. And I do pass that on to all my authors. So this is a bit of a weird tip, really, but it's something that I love the idea of. So I've worked with a lot of authors who write thrillers or books that are based in a very specific region of not usually the UK, but sometimes in other places. And a really nice thing to do, I think, is if you do mention any local landmarks, pubs, restaurants, anything like that in your books, and I have seen this done once, print off a copy of the book cover, put it in a nice little wooden frame, get a little thing, a plaque that says, the pub, whatever, the Dog's Head, as mentioned in this book, and present it to them, and they will love it and stick it up on the wall. So every person that goes in that pub, restaurant, shop, whatever it is, will see that book cover and think, oh, that's cool, I'll go and buy the book.
Right,
so
that's excellent.
It's
That's
kind
a
of
great
just
idea.
off-page, really easy, but cheap guerrilla marketing, and they will love it.
Right. No, I love that idea. We've had a few authors on the podcast and one of them in particular, all of the location. I think some of the locations were fictional, but they were based on real places in the UK. And yeah, that especially when you have those even those smaller communities.
Yeah.
And like, hey, we were in a book. That's pretty neat. You get the community involved in it as well.
So easy. You might even get some press out of it,
Right.
We've got a comedian over here called Alan Partridge, and he did a mockumentary walk around Norfolk, which is actually where I live, and he mentioned a few pubs, and I happened to go into one of the pubs, and there it was, the book cover on the wall, as mentioned in Partridge's book.
Exactly.
I've got another tip, so I'm going to steal two. Very quick one.
Go for it.
This may be blatantly obvious to everyone else, but it just struck me the other day. I've heard authors talk about not being able to choose names for their characters. They really struggle with coming up with either original or interesting names. And I happened to be hanging out at a graveyard the other day, and there were hundreds of really interesting names on all these graves, right? So you can use them because they're not going to moan, are they? So, get a combination of first names and surnames or whatever, and you might grab yourself some really cool and unusual names that you wouldn't have necessarily thought of. There you go.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one. Right. Now, the trick is I write in science fiction. So sometimes you do wind up having to dig for some of those really interesting ones. But actually, I think it would still work.
Yeah.
Because especially if you find there's all kinds of names that have been lost to time.
Exactly.
That just people don't name their kids that anymore.
No.
Then that's a gold mine there. That's a gold mine. All right, Kat, thank you. I'm guessing you probably have a tip that's like reader related or reader support related for us. I'm guessing
it is. It's the rare reader support tip instead of author, but it does apply to authors, whether you're self-published or going through a service. If you're not selling directly through Amazon, you'll notice that a lot of readers might have problems getting their ebooks to Kindle because it is a multi-step process, and the only true 100% guaranteed, unless there's a file problem, way to make sure your readers get their books to their Kindle libraries is by going to Amazon dot, your suffix com, UK, whatever, slash send to Kindle. There's a tool there where all that your reader has to do is download your book file, then use that tool to upload it, and then it will go to every device listed on their Kindle, registered on their Kindle account. And a lot of people think that just because they buy an ebook, it'll automatically port to their Kindle or Kindle app or, even Apple Books app or, other reading apps. But if you're not selling directly through those app stores, then your readers will have to download the file and upload it to those. But we make it pretty easy with the app for users who use BookFunnel, but that's not even required for the most reliable way to get books to Kindle that if you're not selling directly through Amazon. So that's
Right.
my
Right.
hot reader support tip is send your readers to Amazon.com or UK or whatever slash send to Kindle, and they can easily upload all of their books to their Kindle library right there.
Yep. And that tool has really streamlined the process because it used to be a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
If I remember right, it's been a while since I've been like in reader support a whole lot.
It has.
But what I remember was, because I was at one point before I got moved over to author support, and I just remember things like being quite a bit more complex. So it's much more streamlined, which is great. But yeah, if you are delivering books through BookFunnel, just know that like the reader experience is a little different, and sometimes readers, there's not usually a lot of friction when it comes to that. Usually most readers, like, they figure it out. But if it's their first time, there might be some questions, or if they're not familiar with it. So if nothing else, you can also send them to us and we can help them out
Always.
as well. You can always do that. Just send them to help@bookfunnel.com and we can help get them all sorted out. So, well, there we go. That's your tips from the trenches segment there. Those are a good variety of tips there, I feel like. So to get into our main topic for today, which really the main topic is the Digital Authors Toolkit. And Stu, I know you've got a lot of things that you're going to talk to us about. You even have station ready for us here, which we can get to. Main thing that I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but from what I understand, main thing you do for authors is helping them, like you said, with their online presence. And that is oftentimes in the form of author websites, right?
Yep.
And so just as an initial question to introduce the conversation, and then we can go from there. How important is it? If I'm a self-published author, or just any author, do I really need a website? Because it's 2025, right? Is a website really that? I'm being tongue in cheek here, presenting the question, because I know what you have to say on it. But to answer that question, yeah, for authors, how important is having an author website?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I am invested in this answer to some degree, but let's step out of that. And still, I believe 100% you have to have a website. I mean, it's just fundamental to your role as an author to be found, because it's a place where you've got full control. You're not limited by, how big Amazon says the pictures have to be, or, whether it's in a frame or anything. You're totally, it's your house, your rules, so you can do what the hell you like.
Right.
And it is a hub for you to send readers to do so many things, meet you as an author, sign up to your mailing list, obviously, and then get directed from the website to other sources to purchase the books, be that Amazon or if you're wide or whatever. And it is just a piece of real estate that you own, that you've got complete control over, that most importantly as well, if someone searches your name, and I think readers tend to search author names a lot, that's where they go if they're trying to find, I read a great book by XYZ. Oh, I'll go and have a look for the XYZ. And you need to be able to connect those two things up, the person searching and the thing that they find. And of course, now, even more important, with GEO, generative engine optimization, another little acronym there, people are going to ChatGPT and saying, can you find me a book, sci-fi book, based in the future, featuring a female astronaut? So you've got to have all that information on your website for these LLMs to find as well. So it's got
Yeah.
a two-prong attack now, not only for sort of traditional SEO, search engine optimization, but now for GEO or whatever they're going to adopt as the key
Right.
phrase. So yeah, from my point of view, it's about ownership. It's about having somewhere that you can design, you can have all your gear on there, podcasts, interviews, books, you name it. It's just your little thing. And I think it makes your life as an author real.
Right. Right. And I think for some readers, it's maybe, I'm sure there are plenty of authors out there, especially in this era, who might forego a website because they might be thinking like, I'm going to put my books up on Amazon anyway. That's where people are going to be going to buy my books, right?
Or I have a
Or
Facebook,
whatever
I
they're
have an
getting them
Instagram.
through. Yeah. Like I have social media and my books are there on Amazon. A website seems like it's an extra step I don't need to do. But how does that really help you? Like, I imagine there are some readers that kind of, wonder that maybe like, are you really legit on some level? But I think it maybe helps you stand out when you do, because there's that level of, like you said, it's your own space and you own it, but it's also kind of like you're establishing yourself as like, just like you would if you had a brick and mortar establishment. It's a real place somebody
Exactly.
can go to.
Mhm.
It kind of almost makes you feel more like real and rooted digitally. I don't know if you have anything to speak to that, just in terms of like, like we've already kind of beat that topic to death. It is important. You need to have it. But I think there's a lot of authors in that camp who just
You
have
you
maybe
can
skipped it.
exist without one. I mean, there's no question about that.
Right.
I don't think you'll exist as well as having one. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing about it. It's going to point all those people to the Facebook page, to the Instagram, to the Amazon. That's the thing about it that's great, is that it's a hub for it and
Right.
relatively
Exactly.
inexpensive, and and it makes it real. And you wouldn't dream of having a business, another business, without having a
Right.
website, would you? So
Right, right. And I know at some point here we're going to, I think, probably get the chance to, in the presentation that you're going to share, look at maybe some of the things that you've designed for authors. When I took a look at just some of the examples on your website of websites that you had designed for other authors, I see why people come to you. Because I think a lot of authors, when maybe part of it is they think of their website, a lot of them are probably trying to do it themselves, which is fine. There's people out there doing the DIY method. For some people, maybe it's their budget, whatever it happens to be, but they're thinking, well, how nice can I really make a website on my own? And then I saw some of the websites you had designed, and I was just floored. They're gorgeous. And
thank you so much.
I have to say, and with some of the other things that you were doing with video and whatnot, integrating that into the whole thing, I think it really helps them to stand out. What have your authors who you've helped, what have they had to say about, when they got their website redesigned by Digital Authors Toolkit? What have they said the results have been?
Well, very positive, thankfully. We've got, like I say, we've done over 350 author websites, and, not of those, but got like 200 5-star reviews on Readsy, no 1 or 4-star reviews at all. People tend to love it. I think I try really hard. I'm going to go a step further than what I said earlier about the website. I think the website as well is like a love letter to your readers. This is your first chance to really introduce you as a person, as an author, to write to them direct. You're not having to go through a third party. It is your thing. And I try and create a really immersive, interactive, interesting experience. I think very cinematically and filmic. So I
Mhm.
love, things. I want the reader to land on an author website and instantly understand what it's about. So if it's a sci-fi,
Right,
author, I want them to go, boom, I get it. Whether that's moving spaceships or whatever it might be.
right.
I'm a really big believer in animation and video and just having a whole experience. I think the days of a white background with your books plonked on it, are still is still valid, but our audiences are now experiencing the world in very different ways. They're used to video. Video works. Don't tell me it doesn't work. Look at TikTok,
Yeah,
look at stories, look at everything
Yeah.
else.
right,
So we have to follow that, and that's my kind of ethos really with authors. I try and look at technology and apply it to readers. Authors and readers, and I think that's my USP. Is trying to make
right,
the websites wow, whoa, that's amazing, and
right,
have a very contemporary focus, so for following what's going on in the world.
right, Right. No, they really stood out when I took a look at them and kind of made me jealous of those authors, to be quite honest with you.
Well, shamefully, the portfolio on my website is about 2 years out of date, as is always the case. You know, you do your own one last. So we've got so many more exciting ones to put on that would,
Right.
probably be of interest. So you've inspired me, motivated me to
Absolutely.
get on there and update the portfolio with some new ones.
Right. Glad to be of service in that regard
Thank you.
then, I guess.
Yeah.
So in terms of, because like some of the things you mentioned, I think like it makes sense. Like if, like you said, I can see when you say you think cinematically, like when I see those previews of those websites, that I totally see that now. Like absolutely,
It's very
you come
opening
at
credits
it
of the
with that
movie.
kind.
Yeah.
Right, right. It's like inviting, it's immersing you in it. Like when you said those words, like, okay, yes, absolutely. What are some other things that you do to try to help author websites, like help them stand out and whatnot?
I mean, architecture of the site itself is important. So not just the way it looks, but how it functions in terms of the journey the reader takes. So it's all about hitting them with the genre, then the book, and then the sign up to my list and get X, Y, Z. That we all know that's the gold standard for
Right.
growing your audience, and that's something you can't do if you don't have a website because you've got nowhere to send them to sign up to, really.
Since you're building this toolkit to help authors kind of create their own space, um you're not an author, but do you have any feelings on selling direct versus going wide versus sticking with one? Do you get a lot more customers that are direct sellers that sell wide versus sticking to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whatever?
So obviously this has been a hot topic for, a couple of years now. And, because some big players in the industry have talked about it, a lot of other small authors have jumped on the sort of bandwagon, if you like, and said, I want to sell direct. And obviously, I've got a great working relationship with BookVault, who obviously print on demand, which we can use on Wix, as well as, because I only build my websites on Wix, but it also syncs up with Lulu. So, there's opportunity there very easily to print on demand and sell direct, and also using services like your own BookFunnel. I mean, it's a really interesting one because there are so many benefits. I have actually got a couple of slides in my presentation, which I'll whip past when we get there. But there's obviously the advantage of getting that personal relationship with your reader. You get their address, you get their, email address, not just their address. And, and you obviously make a little bit more money per sale, potentially in the sort of immediate sale, but there are things to consider. And I always do give the other side of the coin to my authors, because a lot of them will say to me, I want to sell direct. And I say, well, just hold on a second. These are the reasons why I think you shouldn't. Okay. And there are some. Shall I get to those when we get to the presentation? Because you can see them then.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I mean, we can get, yeah, we can get it now or whatever you want to share. But I will say that, we kind of say the same, we have sort of the same message. And obviously we're BookFunnel, so we help authors facilitate direct sales. That's what we do. So for some authors, it's a great fit and it makes sense for their business model. And for other authors, it sounds really attractive, but there's some things that you got to consider. And our opinion has always been like, we're going to support authors and give them the tools regardless of which path they take.
Exactly.
So if you're a KU exclusive author using BookFunnel, we don't have any problem with that, right? We're not going to push you to sell direct, but if you want to sell direct, we're not going to tell you, not to either. And so, yeah, but we can get to some of those reasons. I'm pretty sure we probably line up.
Yeah.
In terms, because for some authors, and I think it's an individual case by case basis. For some authors, it probably checks out, and the math is probably there. Like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. And we've had some pretty successful authors who do direct sales, had them on the podcast, and when you kind of see behind the scenes and know what they have to do to keep that engine up and running, you have to kind of become Amazon yourself.
It's a lot of work for sure.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So tell me maybe what some of because I imagine there's probably some authors who maybe they created their website like 10 years ago and they've left it there and they haven't updated it, or it's just kind of one of those things that's like in the back of their mind. Like what has changed? Like what's the technology like now? I know you've already mentioned a couple things, but how have things changed in like the last 10, 15 years that authors just might not be aware of? Websites can do that sort of thing now, or just the way that they can look, how attractive they can be? What are some changes that have happened? Because I imagine there's a lot.
I mean, the landscape has completely transformed
Right.
from not only the platforms that people are using, but what those platforms do.
Hmm.
Like I've said a couple of times, I've built loads of author websites, and they're all on Wix. And the reason I've used Wix is because after lots of investigation and research, it seemed to me that Wix was almost like it was made for authors. It's a
Hmm.
one-stop shop with so much in it. You can make videos, you can edit images, you can obviously have your website, you can have there's an email service built in, comparable to MailerLite and MailChimp. So all the authors that I work with, I recommend they use that. It's just the whole ability to create an interesting space is what's made, the major change. So I mentioned earlier, the kind of white background with your book stuck on it, with a blurb
Hmm.
underneath, that's very much in the past. And I think, to move with the times, there's a lot of design cues and contemporary kind of, we've seen a lot of movement on lots, you've only got to look at the way that Apple markets stuff. They use all these weird and wonderful designs or whatever, and it's because that is very modern and very contemporary. And I think those design cues are now possible, on a lot of the platforms that are available for authors. So I think in terms of what you can put on your website has changed. Even just integrations with things like BookFunnel, that is a newish thing that,
Hmm.
you can kind of connect up your MailerLite and what have you. There's all sorts of crossovers, and the web gets a bit tighter with all these other companies kind of will do that. And actually, BookFunnel doesn't sync up with Wix yet, so wait, wait.
Right. Right.
um,
I have a note on that, but
yeah,
I'll let you finish.
yeah. So yeah, and I think the cost is relatively. I mean, like for Wix, for example, you can have a fully e-commerce website for £259 for 3 years. With everything. And I mean, that's pretty cheap, less than $100 a year. And I'm not here just to shove Wix down your throat at all, but it's because it's what I know, and I believe and trust in. So yeah, I think the whole landscape's changed. I think the need for it is greater. The need for a website is greater, and just the ability to be able to make that space interest and connect up with lots of other services is one of the main things that's changed.
Right, right. As far as so we actually did look into, I'm not going to spill too many beans here. This is a little bit behind the scenes. We have explored an integration with Wix. It is something we have looked into. Unfortunately, there are some of their terms that were problematic for us. And that's where I'll leave it. But just so everybody in the audience knows, we have nothing against Wix. In fact, we
Not
were
at all.
really excited to develop an integration, but there were some hurdles there. And maybe after the call, Stu, we can get your input on that.
Yeah, sure.
But so we chose to forego it. But that being said, there are still authors who have Wix websites that still use
Loads,
BookFunnel.
loads. I
Yeah.
know exactly the way to work around it. It's not a
Oh, yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, and what do you recommend for authors, I guess, in terms of if you're using Wix and you want to use BookFunnel, what's your recommended workaround?
Yeah, so it's really simple. So when you sign up to BookFunnel and you create your landing page to give away your free, whatever it is, lead magnet, just make sure you untick the box that says collect email. And then when people go to your website, they sign up to get your free book, and you send them a link, or, you say, hey, thanks for signing up to my website or my newsletter. Here's the link to get your free book,
Yep.
because we've already got their email address. So we don't need to collect it again at BookFunnel.
Right.
They just click the button, and it takes them to BookFunnel landing page. They download the book.
Right.
I don't think there's any less or more friction in that journey
Right.
than if you're filling in your email on BookFunnel. It's as easy. So we don't need their email twice. So we just get it on the website and use BookFunnel to deliver the book. Easy.
Exactly. And this is what we recommend
Mhm.
authors do in many cases. There's some other things. Some authors are a little skittish about that, because that when you're not collecting emails with a landing page, technically speaking, readers can share that link and then other readers can get the book without having to join your mailing list. So that is technically a possibility. But there's two things that I have to say to that, which is, number one, if readers share the link to your free book, you should take it as a compliment because they wanted to share it with somebody. Like, hey, this was really good. You should check it out. So you should have a link somewhere in there to redirect people to join your mailing list in case they got it from somewhere else. That might be a good idea, somewhere in the book itself. But then also, most readers, we've found 99% of readers are honest
Exactly.
and they want to support authors.
If
And
they
it's a
want to
very,
get, they'll get it one way or another.
right. There's a very small percentage of readers that are doing anything nefarious when it comes to that. Now, there are some, and it's not cool. We don't like it. If you're watching this, cut it out. But
Stop it.
We know what
generally,
you
it's a
do.
very right. And we have tools in place for that sort of thing. I've seen some authors too who, and I know what some other authors will do, because technically you can collect the emails with BookFunnel and then manually download the emails and then add them to Wix or something like that. So you could do that if you really wanted to collect the emails with BookFunnel. You could. The downside there is that if you have some sort of email automation that you want to have triggered right when they sign up for your list, that's harder to do.
Yeah,
Because
exactly. Yeah, almost. It'll
the
only happen when you upload. Well, in fact,
right.
it doesn't even happen then because you have to set it to do that when you add imports.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
depends on what service you're using.
yeah.
A presentation for us, so we'll go ahead and let you pull that up here.
So I just put together, I'm going to try and kill you by PowerPoint. I hate PowerPoint, but it was the best and easiest way to demonstrate some of the stuff I wanted to share with you today. So one of my passions, like I mentioned earlier, is just trying to find stuff that takes you beyond what you kind of traditionally have as an author. So the book, Michael Evans talks about this a lot, beyond the book. Big fan of his stuff. But so I'm always taking tech that's out there and thinking about how it can be applied to authors. And obviously we've been through this whole selling direct thing, as I mentioned earlier as well. You get this direct relationship with readers who purchase from you. You often are able to use their email addresses. You can email them, add them to your lists, all that kind of stuff. You've got full control over your marketing, your design, your branding, however you want to shape this. It's entirely up to you. And that's a really nice way to be, rather than feeling you've got to do it like, one of the kind of shops tells you to do it. Another big benefit, obviously, is special editions. So, lots of companies that are now doing these print on demand, you can get, gold foiled and shiny backs and all the rest of it, which is something you can't easily necessarily get from some of the bigger stores. And so there's lots of benefits, obviously, including more money per book sale, if it works out that way. But like I said earlier, I do always advise authors that there is another side of the coin. And although, there's been some big players shouting about how amazing it is and how much they're selling on print on demand and selling direct, the facts of the matter are you do need an e-commerce platform, something like Wix or Shopify or WooCommerce, and they tend to come with their own cost. So I think the cheapest tier for Shopify, for example, is $25 a month. So immediately you've got to be making more than $25 a month in sales to be able to pay for the e-commerce platform. And there's also a learning curve involved in that because, you've got to learn how to upload the books. You've got to learn how to be a customer service advisor if you've got returns or if you've got problems with deliveries. It is a whole new realm of thinking when you become the shop, if you like. Not only does it cost you more, but you've got to think about yourself as the person that deals with all of that. Obviously, you have to generate all the traffic to the website yourself. You're not getting any leg up like you do on Amazon. They do the books bought like yours and all the rest of it, but you have to generate all that traffic. So if you don't sell any books, it's probably because you haven't got any traffic. So you've got to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how do I get people here? I mentioned earlier, there's a steeper learning curve across all of this. You've got to learn about paper thicknesses and all the sorts of stuff that you may not have even thought about. Postage, it is a minefield of things that you've got to tick off and understand if you do start selling direct. And bear in mind, my preface to this was do it. It's great. This is the kind of why you might not. People, there's a trust thing. I think we touched on this earlier. People may not be that confident about putting their credit card details into a website they don't know. They're quite happy to give their money to Jeff, but not so happy to give it to Stu, because they don't know who I am. They're not entirely sure that, I'm legitimate. So there's a little bit of nervousness from readers there. There's obviously a higher cost to the customer generally for buying a print on demand or selling sold direct book, because it often includes the postage, which some of the bigger stores sort of swallow. So oftentimes you're going to be paying a little bit more as a reader to get the books in the first place. You can't get a bestseller tag from sales from your website if you're selling direct, because it doesn't count towards sales on Amazon, for example. That's a big one for me, I think. If I was an author, I would be wanting to grab that bestseller tag and then maybe think about selling direct, just so I get it. And also, you don't get any sort of organic verified reviews. Nobody chases a person, or not very often do they chase a person that's bought a book from you for a review, and it doesn't get posted in a public forum like Amazon, which again is social proof. There's lots of reasons why that's a great thing. So they're my kind of caveats to, great, selling direct's brilliant, but, just remember this as well. And I have seen, a number of authors start selling direct and then stop because this has all got in the way and it's become a bit overwhelming, or they didn't realize they wouldn't get X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. Yeah. You do have to be prepared. Obviously, a BookFunnel, like if you're selling ebooks and audiobooks, we can help your readers if they have trouble getting their books. So we can help you out with that support side of thing.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
we do want to caution authors that doesn't mean that we take over all of your customer service. So you still have to process refunds. You still have to handle a lot of that stuff. Obviously, if somebody's like, how do I get this ebook onto my Kindle? We can help with that part, but there's a significant part of like the customer service. And Kat, you know this too. You're the primary reader support person here. So I guess you can tell us too, like readers can sometimes get pretty frustrated about that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, especially if
It's just
they've,
part of it's the nature of the beast.
yeah, if they've, sometimes there's a typo in the email, and so the delivery action triggered to the wrong email address, so they didn't receive their transaction email or their book into their BookFunnel library. Sometimes, like, there's a whole bunch of things that could go wrong in the process that we can help your readers with. But on the flip side of that, like if they bought physical copies of a book, we can't help with that. If you've gone over on your pre-order date and because you couldn't finish it in time, you'll need to reach out to your readers and let them know that. We can't do returns because we don't process the transaction. So there's definitely some things on the author side, especially if they're going direct, that they'd have to deal with.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these things will kind of over time. We've even seen in the last few years, some of these issues are kind of getting solved. Like people are figuring out how to do it. But if you're going to do any amount of volume in sales and you're going to do them direct, you are going to be inundated with a lot of customer service issues, which if you're selling on Amazon or another platform, you never see those. It's all invisible to you. And so you kind of have to ask yourself, like, is that the business you want to have? Is that, to speak to the trust thing as well, because it's absolutely a valid point. Social proof is almost even more important for somebody selling direct than it is for somebody who's just putting their books on Amazon, because they are coming to your website and they are purchasing direct from you. And you need to engender trust. So using a platform that's also well known when you're talking about like your e-commerce platform. So Wix is probably, like, people are familiar with making purchases on Wix. So that's probably going to help you out a little bit. Shopify is another one that people are very familiar with. Like I bought my wife a t-shirt off of Facebook a few months back, and it was Shopify, and Shopify remembered my details from another purchase that I had made on somebody else's Shopify store. So there's some solutions emerging to these problems, but you got to understand.
I'm not being prescriptive, that isn't my kind of, you must not sell direct, because I love it. I think it's brilliant, but I'm just kind of cautious. I mean, the thing I say to authors when they ask me about this generally is, like, I say, look, especially if you're a first-time author, get your book on Amazon, sell as many as you can, get that bestseller tag, get some verified reviews, grow your audience, get a fan base, and then once you've got their passions up, sell direct to them, because they will buy from you.
Yeah. Exactly. I think it's important for authors to know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
Right. When especially if they're first-time authors. So absolutely.
Okay, so I think Kat mentioned earlier, maybe animated covers. So this has been something that I've been working on for ages, and I love it. I really am. I mean, you probably sense my excitement about some of this stuff, because I really do enjoy doing it, and I think it's such a step in a new direction. So why would you get animated covers is the question there. So obviously it's the wow factor, and everyone's looking for the stop the scroll. How do we stop people's thumbs? But how do we get them to stop and look at your content on social media or wherever? Movement adds drama or emotion that a static image can't. So it brings you, we talked about earlier, that immersive experience of seeing something and understanding it through video. And a static image can't do that in the same way that maybe a video can. They obviously make ads and promotions feel more dynamic and professional, so it looks cool. And I think that's part of this journey for a reader as well. I want them to look on social media and go, what's that? What? A book cover that moves? Are you kidding me? I've never seen that before. That's amazing. It puts you in a different category of people, if you like, if you've got these extras. Doesn't mean you can't use normal covers, but these are just add-ons that you can use to attract readers or interest them or get attention. You stand out. Basically, as it says there, there's a crowded market out there. You want to be doing things that other people aren't. And it's fairly low cost. With the advent of AI, this is so easy. You can do it in 10 minutes. You might be surprised to believe, but it's true. Anyone watching this could do it. They might not want to do it. And I'm just going to say one word, Superman, okay? Because we all know that it came out on July the 11th. It was in my diary. I haven't seen it, and I'm absolutely gutted because I'm a massive Superman fan. But here's the magic. When they released the film poster for this film, it was animated, right?
Right.
It had sound, it had animation. It set the fandom alight because it really hadn't ever really been seen like this before. I know it seems so easy and basic, but this was a film poster that sang to you, that had movement, and it told you instantly what's happening. Superman is coming, kind of thing. And that just put such a smile on my face, because that's what I've been reaching for authors. This moment of wow. So I've started with overlays. And if you look at these 3 examples here, they're all real examples that we've done for people or whatever. So Michael over here is a great author who's written loads of stuff that you'd have heard of. But, we just overlaid some water there. So there's a drowning woman, really nice subject, obviously. But, we just overlaid some bubbles there just to bring it alive. Okay. So I don't know if she dies in the end. I haven't read the book. Let's hope she doesn't. But we've put the bubbles on there. It just brings that book title alive, okay? It just gives us a little bit more insight into the book. Rage of the Djinn. Again, I don't read every book that I get sent, believe it or not. But, we just added some sparks here because it's about heat and fire and all kinds of other stuff. And then on the end here, we've just got a very subtle kind of overlay, which just shouts even more that this is a fantasy novel, all right? So not complicated. It's not that difficult. There's loads of software out there that can do this. Takes a few minutes, and oftentimes it is either free or very low cost. So that's your kind of starting point. Just put some stuff. If it's raining on your book cover, add some water, whatever. Then we go into sort of true animation. And I've got quite a few of these, so stop me if you get bored. But so this is literally the book cover that I was sent by Heather. And, this is what we've turned it into.
Wow.
So the dog walks, the helicopter comes forwards, there's gunshots and all sorts, and then it's done. So just a 10-second little animation that's gone from a static book cover to a moving image, much more cinematic and filmic. So here's another one. This is another one of Heather's, actually. So that's how it came to me, just with 2 people looking into the distance. So we've just added the sky and then walking into the book cover, and that's it. But that's going to stand out on social media. Then we've got this one, and we've all seen this kind of cover, thriller, the poor running man who every time he goes anywhere near a building, it seems to blow up because it's always in the background. And he's like, oh my God, every time I go anywhere. So this is again, but here he is. And all we've done is made him walk towards the book, into the book cover. Really simple little effect, but it's something we've never seen the running man do, and that is going to stand out in a crowd. This is another guy who it's about spiritual awakening, this book. So that was the original book cover, and we took that and we made the butterfly fly into the sunset because it's about a butterfly that flies.
Mm-hmm.
So we've just done that. This one's very subtle, but again, it's just something that so there you go. It just starts to move. There's the smoke. The protagonist is looking at the action in the distance, and then we just go a little bit closer into the book cover to see what's going on. And again, here's our running man. You know, we've seen this book cover a zillion times in its style anyway. Beautiful. I love these. You know, it tells me instantly it's a thriller, but let's have him actually engaged. We've got the birds flying, the guys walking. It just catches your eye. Another one here with what I don't want you to forget is that these come as static images, literally as you would get from your cover designer. There's nothing special about them. We've done them for non-fiction books as well, so this isn't just a fiction thing. So this guy's, you know, he had a compass on the front and we spun it round because it just makes sense to do that. And I think that's it in terms of examples. So I don't know if you've got any questions about any of that or thoughts. But
no, yeah, I think there's a lot of. I remember this topic did come up a while back. I remember Joe Conrath mentioning this. This would have been over 10 years ago now, this idea. And so there's other people that have, I think, had this idea.
Mm-hmm.
But for a while there, it didn't seem like it really caught on. But with the way that books are being shared on social media, and I don't know if Amazon's going to let you upload an animated book cover anytime soon, necessarily. Who knows? But the fact that the way that social media has gone, and like you said, video is everything. Just some of those examples you gave, I really like the subtle ones.
I did
personally,
too.
like the smoke in the background on that one. The one with the dog and the helicopter, though, that was very impressive. And like just that's gonna be so eye-catching rather than just sitting there as a static book cover.
Yeah.
And as static book covers, they're still great. But once you even just like the water bubbles or this like little ash, like little dots of ash, that it just gives it so much more life.
It does.
Right.
And, you know, on TikTok, you can just see the author saying, you know, buy my new book now. And, you know, funnily enough, book covers are TikTok shaped and suddenly it cuts to this moving book cover. I just think there's such a world for it, you know, and like I said as well, it's low cost, easy access, you know, it's not difficult to do. So yeah, it's not something you have to do, but stand out, be different.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and then that kind of led me on to, and this is all sort of on top of the website stuff, obviously, although we're using some of this in that as well. But let's augmented reality. So, you know, we're probably beating ourselves around the head hearing about AI, you know, but this is the next thing or not the next thing, but alongside that, augmented reality. So we are seeing this in lots of places. So for example, if you go to Amazon now, you see on the left here, you can see the products that you want to buy in your room. So you scan the floor and then you put the object that you're looking at in your room. My wife told me off for making that such a messy table. She saw this presentation, said, "Why the hell did you tidy it?" So apologies to Emma, but there we are. You know, so you've probably all done this. You've been to opticians' sites and tried glasses on. You can try wigs on. You can put furniture in your room. You know, you can overlay this stuff now into the real world. Okay. And it's a really exciting and interesting concept. I don't think it's fully there yet, but it is, you know, very much being adopted, not only by Amazon, but now if you've got the new Apple iPhone 16, which I have, I'll just point that out. You can now take not only all the usual standard photos, but you can now take a spatial photo, which is basically an augmented reality experience of. So I was at an Ed Sheeran concert on Saturday night, and you know, I took a spatial photo of the auditorium in the hope that one day soon, you know, I'll be able to upload that into my Apple glasses or such, and then be able to look around the stadium, you know, and see the world in that augmented kind of experience. So I love all this tech. You know, like I say, I'm a big tech freak and a bit of a nerd. So I was thinking, right, how do I make this happen for authors? How does this technology apply to what we're doing already? And I came up with this. So I want you to actually try this. So all you need to do is get your phones out, put it on the usual photo app, whatever, and then just scan the QR code, and something will pop up at the bottom which says something like view our stories AR view or something. Then once that's happened, you just move your phone over to the book cover and wait for the magic to happen.
There is something people don't know about isolation in space.
Wow.
It can drive you mad. Alone.
There we go.
In a station on the brink, the edge, where
I
every
can hear
breath
that.
is life.
Amazing.
The Edge, a sci-fi thriller. Available now.
Wow.
The Edge by author Nathan Harrington takes you on a harrowing journey through the vast, unforgiving expanse of space.
So if I'm narrating what I'm seeing here, just so that, because for the folks at home watching,
as well in a second.
You're
Well,
right.
yeah, people can do
Right.
it.
Yeah. So wow. Okay. So I'm looking at I'm literally pointing this at the screen, so I'm seeing what Stu is sharing here on the screen in front of me, but on the screen on my phone, that the book is
Come
basically
alive.
turning into an animation. Yes.
Yeah. So I just
And
not,
So
this is
cool.
not a real book. It's not a real book trailer. I just made a very quick book trailer in video or something and have overlaid it to the book cover, right? So the reader can experience whatever I put on here. So let's try
right.
another one. So this is the other application I think is really good for it. So if you do the same again, scan the
Yeah.
code, hover over the book. Unfortunately, it is me.
That is so cool.
I'm I'm making this up, obviously, but this is what, can you imagine readers walking around Barnes and Noble? They pick up a book, they scan the cover, and it says, hey, thanks for picking up my book. Or at the end of it, thanks you for reading it. And don't forget to sign up to my mailing list. The book can talk to them in your
Right.
voice as an author, or you can make a video or have whatever you like. Let's look at a couple more examples and I'll be able to show an example. So it's not only on the front cover, it's on the inside as well. So do the same here. So if you scan that QR code and then point it at the text, you'll see a short video of all of the locations that are in this book. So she's talking there. This story is set in the northeast of Scotland, where they speak a dialect of Scots called Doric or whatever. And if you scan that page, it will show you some pictures of the location. So you could be talking about a fantasy world and create some AI imagery. You could be talking about a very specific location and show the reader the experience of being in that place as you talk about it. I think that's a really interesting application. Another really interesting application, which I actually thought of a couple of days ago, is, and it goes back to our selling direct, actually. A lot of authors want to sell signed copies, but that involves an extra step of getting the book, signing it, and then posting it out themselves. Well, now you could personalize a message to someone on the front cover of your book as an author, and just send a QR code. So they scan the QR code and it says, hey, I'm author Stuart Grant. Fred tells me you really like my writing. I wanted to dedicate this book to you and I hope you enjoy it. So suddenly you've got
That's
a
brilliant.
frictionless way of, personalized messages to readers on your books or in your books. One more, I think. This is to show the readers, the people that are watching us, what's going on if they haven't watched already.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
scanning the code. I should have done this at the front. You click the view.
That's
There's no app to download, and you point it at the thing. And you can add calls to action at the bottom there. So it could say, click to view my website or sign up to my mailing list or whatever it is. And they click through to that as well. So this is just
Yeah.
a made up thing. And then one more, I think. Yeah. So let's try your very selves. So, this goes way beyond the book cover or inside the book. It goes into industry and business. So if you scan that code, again, I've just made an AI video about BookFunnel. So it will just play as you scan that logo.
Yeah. No, there's lots of applications for
Yeah.
this sort of thing. Exactly.
It's brilliant.
And for
Yeah.
right.
I'm excited about it anyway.
Right. No, there's just there's so much potential there and so many ways you could use it. The list is really long in my head,
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
but it like infinite, especially for, and the examples that you showed were great, but like anything you can do to immerse anybody into your book, I think authors could take that idea and like run with it, and have like a whole bunch of different ways that they could execute on that.
Yeah.
It's just because that's never, I've obviously known about AR. I've even done the thing, like you said, with Amazon and like
Mhm.
put the product on the table and like, oh, okay, that's cool. But like, no, I just never thought of it for books or as an author. But that's
Once
like,
I thought of it
insane.
and realized how well it works, I just was like, this is incredible. This takes books to a whole nother level because no longer are they completely static and voiceless. You could have the narrator reading pages. You could have, like you say, the list is endless.
Right.
It's very exciting technology, very exciting. And again, fairly low cost. Well, very low cost actually, and really easy to do. You just upload the image and then upload the video and one talks to the other. It's that easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant.
And then I thought I'd just round up with a few other bits to kind of talk about other stuff that I've thought about, which adds value to your website. And what you're doing as an author. So, a really obvious thing I think is to include Spotify playlists on your website for the book. So it could be songs that the character listens to. It could be a Spotify playlist that you've listened to as you wrote the book. It could be in a scene, the character walks into a bar, whatever. So, they're free to create. Get your readers to create some, the stuff they listen to when they're reading your books. I don't know. Again, endless and free.
Mm-hmm.
Create some resources for book clubs. They're still quite a thing in the UK. So have a downloadable PDF on your website where you can send people, because people tell people. So if they're in a group, they'll say, oh, go to this guy's website and get the resources, and there'll be questions or maps or whatever it is, that they can use when they're discussing your book in their club. Extra media. I mean, here we are sitting talking basically on our laptops, right? Dead easy. We've got like studio quality equipment without having studio quality equipment. Why aren't authors doing this more? So, sticking a phone on a stand or on the table and recording the first chapter of their book, reading it and sticking it on the website, and then saying, hey readers, if you want to hear me actually read the book, it's on the website. So that's a really good reason to go and see it. And then any other media that you've got involved in, whether you've been on a podcast or you've been on a newspaper or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we saw this in huge explosion, and I think you're the kind of guy that would have done this, Jack. Gone out and bought the behind-the-scenes stuff on DVD, of your favorite film.
Yep.
We were all suckers, we all bought the original film and the 15 behind-the-scenes DVDs that came with it. And again, I think, authors are missing out on this such easy stuff. You could film yourself writing, you could film your office, you could take pictures of your dog. If you are an author and you've got a dog and you have not put that in your newsletter or on your website, you are missing a trick, because readers love animals, right? Or cats.
Right.
Less so with cats, but okay. But yeah, you get the idea. There's so many.
Two kinds of animals and two different types of people, but
Yeah, exactly. But there's so much behind the scenes stuff that you could generate really quickly and easily, which you can then stick on your website. Again, this is stuff you can't put anywhere else, really. And it's just another draw to get, we were talking earlier about driving traffic if you are selling direct, but anyway, driving traffic, get stuff on there that people want to see, not just your book cover, character profiles and artwork, it's so easy now to go on to blinking wherever, AI, ChatGPT, upload your book cover or whatever and say, can you create a character from my book? This is the blurb, and being out it comes. Whatever your feelings are about AI, I'm not suggesting you do or don't use it, but the capacity to do this is out there and just generate content that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise have. The reader sample thing, I think this is a major miss for most authors. You can copy the link from Amazon. I've checked with Amazon, this is perfectly legit, and have that link on your website. So they click on your website, they can click the button that says reader preview, and it will open that reader preview page, which has got the buy now button. It's got the 10% or whatever it is that you've uploaded as an author. So you can have all of that functionality legitimately on your website. And all you do is right click the reader sample button on Amazon and and copy the link and stick it on your website. And similarly, so again, they're coming to the website, they can read a bit. They don't have to go to Amazon to do that. And similarly, you can do it with audio samples as well. This is a little bit more tricky, but not that much. So, underneath the book cover on Amazon, if you've got audio, it will show you the sample. You can now get that sample and stick it on your website as an MP3. And again, I've checked with Audible. It's perfectly legitimate. It's absolutely fine. And again, another reason to stick stuff on your website that the reader won't expect. They go to Amazon to see this stuff, but now, boom, it's on your website. And I'll just race through these. We're probably nearly at time, but why not do some exclusive short stories or deleted scenes? You could write some scenes that aren't really deleted, but you pretend they are. And say, if you want to read the bit between this chapter and that chapter, I've put it on my website. Have a quiz about the books, have interactive maps, have fan art gallery, have video content like book readings, or even, and I've said this to a few authors, don't worry about being invited onto a podcast. Get Auntie Mabel round, get her to sit at the dining room table, give her a list of questions, stick the phone on you and get her to ask you them and answer them, and then stick that video on the website. Make your own little podcast in your dining room. So easy. One of my favorite authors is JD Kirk. I love him. He's absolutely incredible. And I'm obsessed. but he has this brilliant character called Bob Hoon, who has got the foulest mouth you'll have ever heard. Do not listen to this. If you are sensitive in any way, you will be offended. Okay, it doesn't matter what you believe in, you'll be offended. But this is brilliant. You go onto the website, got this page for Bob Hoon. You click the "Let Him Rip" button there, which is in the middle, and it comes out with an insult. So it says there, "You are a sheep-eyed streak of pish," which, if you're Scottish, you'll know what that is. If you're not, you could probably work it out. But yes, I mean that it took me
That
about
is great.
25 clicks. It is, and I'm such a fan. And when I went to his website and saw that, I was like, genius, this is brilliant. This brings the character to life. I laughed, it's so clever. I'm not suggesting you do that, but it's just
But you could do something
stuff
like that from like a character's voice, like, oh, well, have what do you think so and so would say about this, and have it generate something from a character's
Right.
voice.
exactly.
Yeah.
Family trees, for people that are writing historical fictions or complicated
Mhm.
family setups. I did this in Canva, took about 10 minutes, 20 minutes. You can make all of those links clickable as well. So all the book covers, you just bring them in on Canva, make them clickable so that on your website, people can not only see the family tree, but they can click through to the right book that represents the right character. Again, doesn't take very long, but is a lovely way to present your sort of legacy in your books, to the reader. And I think this is my last slide, really. Just kind of thinking again outside the box. I'm a huge Alexa fan, and I've got Alexas literally in every room in my house. My 6-year-old is more smart than me. She walks around saying, "Alexa, turn off TV, Alexa, play Taylor Swift, Alexa, turn on the lights." I mean, it is like living with Tony Stark. I mean, it really is.
Mhm.
But for example, I don't know if you'll be able to hear this. Alexa, open author James Blatch.
Welcome to author James Blatch on Alexa. Let's start. James has 3 books available. You can buy them all on Amazon. You can read more about James and sign up to his mailing list at jamesblatch.com. Want some more?
Yes, please.
The first book is The Final Flight, Fast and Invisible to the Soviet War Machine. NATO's new weapon will change the course of the Cold War. There's just one problem, and veteran engineer Chris
You get the
Milquist has
idea.
found it.
So,
Yeah.
you can talk to Alexa about an author. It will tell you all about them, where you can find them, their books. It could play audio clips. It can do a whole host of things. And again, completely aside from the book, but you're suddenly in people's homes in a very different and, I think, exciting, interesting way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because even we had some readers are using it, because we had some readers tell us that they have their Alexa or some other device actually read their ebooks to them. So, which is something different, that there's a different functionality, but people have these in their homes and they're using them. So I imagine, like, what does it take to set something up? Because I know that there's, it's not, I know there's like Alexa skills that you can create. I don't know if that's what this is or this is something different, but
It is exactly that. There's 2 ways of doing it. There's the really horribly complicated way, and there's the very easy way. You go to, I can't remember what it's called, alexaskillsdeveloper.com or something, and you just register as an Alexa developer. And then there's a section called Blueprint, and you can create any kind of skill you like. It could be a child's game, it could be whatever. And you can use that personally in your sort of world. So it will load onto your Alexa.
Mhm.
Or you can set it to be available in your, this is a bit complicated. So if I make one in the UK, it will only play on devices that are set to play English UK voice.
Mm.
If you were in the US and you had your Alexa set to speak in English UK, it would
Yeah.
do it, but it won't if you put it in English US. The complicated way of doing it is to go through the whole building a skill, which is then available globally and
Sure.
involves a bit of code and funny business, but
Right.
not
Right.
impossible. And, ChatGPT is my friend. You just go there and say, "I want to do this. Show me how to do it. Take me through it as if
Mhm.
I'm a child, step by step." And it says, "Okay, number 1, go here. Number 2, go here. And here's the thing." So
Yeah.
all of this stuff is happening so fast, thanks to AI, actually, as well. The
Mhm.
ability to learn how to do it is in our grasp.
Right. Right. Well, and I know, like, on as a note on the AI topic, because I know there are some folks, there's different opinions on AI and whatnot, especially like with authors. There's opinions on AI generated art. and using that for book covers. There's opinions on like writing your books with AI, whether or not you're having it generate the book or having it assist you. But even like, just if we set that aside, like you said, some of these things like creating an Amazon or an Alexa skill or that sort of thing, people are using AI, and there's definitely some utility there. I want to link this back to what you said earlier about GEO, which is the counterpart to SEO. I think most people are familiar with SEO, search engine optimization, but people are turning more and more to AI as their search engine. And so what are some things, and I know you can't tell us the whole, spill all the beans here, but if you are wanting to have your website optimized for GEO, so for these AI LLMs to find and use your book as a reference, what are some of the things that you have to do in that regard? Like, what's some of the work involved, and how is that different from SEO?
Yeah, and it is still a whole new world. We're still learning. We're still right on the edge of it, and the beginning of it is embryonic in some ways.
Yeah.
Because we're only just realizing that people are searching in the LLMs for content, in that sense. And, Google is dead. That's the king is dead. To some degree, that is a possibility. And obviously they're on the bandwagon with Gemini. But so it works in a very similar way in that the LLMs look for content and they marry it up with the search. But you need to be publicly available. So it's a good idea as an author to be on places like Goodreads, definitely have a profile on there, have a profile on BookBub, places where chat might go to find information. You have to be there. And in terms of your website, you still think about it in SEO terms. So you still think about, headings and the way that the text is laid out. And you also have to think about it in terms of accessibility as well, very much, more than we ever did. And it is a new shift. There is definitely a shift coming, or it's almost already here. But it's just, I've got another presentation actually, if you want me to, but maybe another day. Yeah, I mean, I did, I've just done a digital session for SPS Live, the self-publishing show. And that is all about this and GEO and how you have to do SEO stuff and GEO stuff. But essentially, good quality content is always going to win, no matter what we're talking about. All right. So making sure you've got good, consistent book blurbs, making sure all your social medias, because LLMs look at social media. So making sure that you mention your genre in your bio on all your social medias. So, science to science. So author of science fiction novels. So if anyone searches science fiction novels, it will find you and present you as the result. It's thinking smart about the places that it's going to go and what you want it to find. And those things are the same things as you wanted before, which is your name, the types of book you write, the titles of your book, and any other pertinent information, that is out there that is going to be relevant for the people that are looking for you. So again, it's always about thinking like the reader as well. So what are they going to Google? I want, some romance fantasy novels featuring a vampire. Well, if that's what your book's about, make sure that is written in every bio, in every book blurb, everywhere, because LLMs will find it. And so will usual search as well.
Right.
Does that
There's a lot of there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, there
between
is.
the two to some extent.
Completely, yeah. The same principles are going to apply.
Right.
It's about writing the right things in the right places to get found.
Right.
But honestly, if you want to get found by ChatGPT tomorrow, then get on Goodreads and create a profile, and get on BookBub and create a profile, and have your Amazon profile up to date and ready. There are 3 things you can do tomorrow in 5 minutes to make sure it's consistent and ready.
Exactly.
At least for what we know at the moment.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? It's one of those things that'll keep on changing. It's interesting, even from our perspective here as BookFunnel support, we have had authors who have come to us and they're like, well, I asked ChatGPT how to troubleshoot this issue, and this, that, or the other, which sometimes has mixed results.
Yeah, definitely verify your results.
Yes, right. If you're going to do that, but nevertheless, just interesting that's what people are turning to first sometimes.
Yeah.
To get answers on questions. generally speaking, if you have a question about BookFunnel and how to use it, I would say you can just email us. You got to wait a little bit longer than you would to get a response from ChatGPT or another LLM. But in that context, yeah, I think the human element of things, we might be able to help you out a little bit better in that regard. But in terms of like searching for information, it makes sense that it's pulling that from everywhere, and so you're going to be discoverable just like you have been on search engines. You should want to be discoverable there, so people can stumble upon you. Just a really interesting evolution with this new technology.
It
Right,
is.
exactly.
It's only tweaks, really, because it's already stuff we had to do. If I was an author, I say we, but all this stuff you had to do anyway. Make sure you were optimized, make sure you're on every platform you could think of. If you haven't got a profile on every social media platform, you're doing it wrong. Even if you've got, even if you're on Instagram, right, and you say, I don't really hang out on Instagram, but you can find me on Twitter or X. So have a profile, even if it's dead, because you never know when a search engine or LLM is going to find that, which points them in the right direction, at least.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of the BookFunnel podcast. Stu, I want to thank you for joining us today. Before we go, anything you want to shout out? Where can people find you, your work, that sort of thing?
Thanks. Well, dead easy to find me, digitalauthorsTookit.com. There's lots of things you can play with and look at, or you can find me on Readsy as well if that's where you'd rather look. And happy to answer any questions. Don't feel you've got to buy a website. You can just email me and chat. Happy to have these discussions. You can probably tell I love talking, so by all means, reach out, ask questions, tell me you like it, tell me you don't, whatever. I'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you
for this episode. It was a blast. You've blown our minds here with some of the stuff. I
really enjoyed sharing it with you. So, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Kat, thank you for co-hosting with me today.
My pleasure.
It was fun to have you on the podcast. We'll have to have you on again. It was good. It was a good, not that there's anything wrong with Emma and Kelly, excellent co-hosts all the time. As always, I don't want anybody to get jealous. Right. Every now and then they need a break, and that's totally fine. It was good to have you here. Thank you for co-hosting. For those of you who are watching or listening, thank you for joining us for this episode of the BookFunnel podcast. If you're on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, leave a comment with maybe your main takeaway from this episode of the podcast while you're there. If you're listening on a podcast platform such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or what have you, please follow us there and leave us a review. It really means a lot. I want to thank you all for listening, and we will see you all in the next one.
Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos from BookFunnel, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.